On November 12th, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency released an official statement from the U.S. government that has been echoed across the nation and by mainstream media. It said the November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. At first look, that seems pretty definitive, and yet the evidence does not appear to support their optimism. Join me in the Economic War Room as we take a bipartisan look at voting machine vulnerabilities. We opened with a statement from the federal agency charged with ensuring the security of our elections. Initially, it was encouraging to see their declaration that our election was the most secure in American history, in spite of all the concerns raised by the Trump campaign. Now, if you're a regular visitor in the Economic War Room, you know we have reason to be suspicious. We've had multiple experts come into our war room and demonstrate just how vulnerable our electronic voting machines really are. We featured Russ Ramsland and a white hat hacker codenamed Jekyll. So let's see some of the things that Russ and Jekyll shared with us in one of our earlier episodes.
You know, for the most part, all of their software is written to be used on Android and Apple. So if I go and I get an Apple tablet and I put software on it, that means all of the known vulnerabilities for that tablet are then subject to being attacked. Now, all of these pieces of equipment require a Wi-Fi signal to report information back.
Right.
So now you're looking at man-in-the-middle vulnerabilities. They're just by looking at the various steps for the information going back, there are about 8 to 10 vectors that information can be manipulated in real time on election night.
Okay, so I hear you and I hear what you're saying and I understand you got this, but I have in my head a vision of here's a machine, a voting machine. I walk in, I get my code, I punch my code in, it goes on a card. Somewhere in my machine there's a card. They take the card to a secure location, they plug the card into a secure, separated from the internet machine. They look at it one time and they say that's the vote. Now later they might be able to manipulate it, but I'm still not guessing. Are you really telling me that when I vote it could be changed there?
What I think what he's telling you and looking here is that it's going to go to 10X or to ES&S or to HART or to Dominion or any of those people, their databases. Those can be exploited, the votes can be changed, they can be then re-uploaded, the history can even be changed and sent back to whatever is the county central voting. And in fact, you would probably see that in the logs, which we've discussed previously, we have seen on the logs. That's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing this in real time happening on the logs.
So this is, in your mind, Russ, this figures out what happened, which you exposed to us before? This explains it?
Yeah, in fact, it even explains the timestamp mismatch issue that we were wondering about, because people who are not loaded into this thing are coming into it and they don't match up on their machines from a timestamp point of view, and so it prints out a timestamp mismatch, and it's an indication that things are being changed.
You mentioned several, ES&S, 10X, you mentioned some other companies.
Dominion,
what are they? Dominion,
HART.
Is Dominion compromised?
Yes.
Jekyll?
Yes.
HART?
HART.
What else? What other companies?
Well, SGO, I would assume.
We've also seen there's a company out of Virginia that we started looking at.
Oh, yeah.
They're compromised. Every system that we've looked at, it's the same people just going to a different market using the same software that they then alter.
And the same vulnerabilities, and they're all leaving the key on top of the map.
Exactly.
Wow.
Wow, that's frightening. It's unbelievable. It maybe explains a lot. It is not a partisan issue, because if the Russians or whomever wanted to put a Democrat in the White House, this is a way they could do it. If they wanted to put a Republican in the White House, this is a way they could do it. It's not one party or the other party necessarily. It is a national security vulnerability.
Not just national security, but then you also look at organizations within the United States. It's when you have businesses that give politicians millions of dollars to push their agenda. Now all of a sudden, they want to make sure that their politician gets into office.
What is so significant about this is that it was recorded in 2019, well before any of the things that we've seen recently. At the time, the economy was roaring, and most analysts believed that President Trump had a really good chance at a landslide re-election victory. Even George Soros admitted that Trump would win in a big way before the pandemic hit. Yet we were pointing out the risks of our electronic voting machines. And you need to know that others were worried as well. In fact, last year, this was a bipartisan concern. So listen to this quote from Medium.com, which is by no means conservative or even Republican. It's the article titled, "America's Electronic Voting System is Corrupted to the Core," and written by Jennifer Cohn on September 7th, 2019. Jennifer wrote, "We can't fix that which we don't understand. The dark underbelly of America's staggeringly insecure voting system is no exception. Without knowledge of the following facts, the American public is at grave risk of being scammed by pretend fixes to a system that is corrupted to the core. Just two vendors," she says, Electronic Systems and Software, ES&S, and Dominion Voting, account for 80% of U.S. election equipment. Thus, corrupt insiders or foreign hackers could wreak havoc on elections throughout the United States by infiltrating either of these vendors. ES&S and Dominion are both owned by private equity, which means we don't know who funds and who controls them. And what little we do know is concerning. That was Medium last year. Consider this from Breitbart this year. The headline is, "Top Democrats Raise Concerns About Dominion Voting Technology in 2019. Democrat leaders, including Senators Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and Ron Wyden, wrote a letter in December 2019 to private equity firms controlling the United States' three leading election technology companies, expressing concerns in the letter about election technology industry vulnerabilities and their lack of transparency." So that was in Bloomberg, covering a letter they wrote by Democrat senators. Even the New York Times has a 2018 video that shows a Michigan professor hacking a voting machine on camera to prove how easy it is. Then there's a 2016 video that shows the same thing from a Princeton professor who hacked a Dominion machine. Then there's a PBS story that nailed it big time, especially in relation to Georgia. Let's watch a short clip from the PBS story.
A federal judge is ordering Georgia to stop using its outdated voting machines and
in August of 2019, a federal judge ordered the state to scrap the flawed machines for something more secure and verifiable. So the state spent more than $100 million to supply every county with so-called image cast machines made by a Canadian company, Dominion Voting Systems. They are ballot marking devices, meaning voters make selections on a touchscreen and ballots are printed with choices embedded in a QR code and listed in plain English. The paper ballot is then scanned and counted. Brad Raffensperger is Georgia's Secretary of State.
When you have a paper ballot, no matter how that really comes about, at the end of the day, you have the paper that you can do the audit from. And then you can audit the elections. That's something I think is more secure, because then we really capture voter intent.
But election security experts say that is not the case.
It's a computer, and you have no idea what's in the computer, and you have no idea what the computer is doing with the information that you give it.
Rich DeMillo is a professor of computer science at the Georgia Institute of Technology. He tried to stop Georgia from buying the Dominion system, now used in 24 states.
A ballot marking device is, in the first place, an extremely expensive pencil that will make mistakes, that is prone to failure, that is prone to misuse. And if it fails, if it's misused, you have no way of telling. If you use a ballot marking device, you don't have the original record of voter intent.
The point is this: claims made by the Trump campaign lawyers are not incredible, nor are they out of bounds. Any reasonable person who watched the ballot totals being reported knows that something very strange happened. And any fair person who looks at the bipartisan warnings before the election knows that there are reasonable grounds to demand a full investigation. The media is rushing to a conclusion that does not match the facts. The office of president-elect is premature at best. In fact, there is a tremendous HBO documentary that covers just how an election might be stolen. That documentary appears almost prophetic when compared to what we saw this year. We're going to walk you through that in the second part of this episode. But again, to show you that this is a truly bipartisan issue, you should check out an article written by my friend Mike Waller, where he details the Jimmy Carter standards for election integrity. It's shocking how many of those standards have been violated in the contested states like Michigan and Pennsylvania and even Georgia. When we come back, we'll cover all of this and more.
Our next president should not be chosen by the media, big tech, or a single political party. He should be chosen by the counting of every legal vote. We, the people, must defend the integrity of our electoral process. We must ensure that an unlawful vote by one does not disenfranchise the vote of another. Let's make sure that we take the time to get it right before we declare a winner to this presidential election. Protect your right to free and fair elections. Visit everylegalvote.com.
As we saw before the break, even if all the standards for voting and audits and recounts had been followed, and of course they were not, we still have the machine vulnerabilities that are at the crux of the Trump case. The media will lie to you, just like the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency did when they declared that the 2020 election was the most secure in history. Only later did we learn that the report that they put out was written by the election machine companies themselves, the very ones who've put our democratic system at risk. And it's not just our hacker who believes this. As we mentioned earlier, HBO has an incredible documentary that proves all of it. If you watch it, you'll see just how foolish the Cybersecurity Agency claim truly is. This documentary exposes Dominion Systems and ES&S in a big way. Most of the contested states are served by these two companies. We believe that this vulnerability explains the very unusual things that we saw in the wee hours of the morning of election night. And if you add in the very suspect activity of election officials, it becomes easy to understand that this is a clear case of attempted election theft. So let's take a look at the trailer for the Kill Chain documentary. It's one of the most definitive pieces on voter machine vulnerability ever produced and features election expert and hacker expert Harry Hursty.
Voting is our capability to have a peaceful transfer of power. If you don't have that, the alternatives are revolutions.
We call them voting machines, but they're nothing more than obsolete computers.
2002 is when they put them in service.
A commonly used argument, they are never connected to the internet.
No voting machines are connected to the internet.
Not connected to the internet.
Not connected to the internet, and therefore cannot be attacked.
Oh, it wants to go to internet. That's very nice.
In 2016, we know that Russian actors targeted state election systems.
When people say no votes were changed, it misses the point.
Imagine you go in and flip the digits of everybody's address.
When you prevent people from casting a ballot, you've hacked an election.
Hackers are a wonderful resource. Every voting machine in this room is in use in next election. We are here 3 days a year. The real adversaries, they run it 24/7 with massive funding.
We are in. Hari takes it personally when people do stupid things with technology. What do you think the security pin is?
They upgrade to 111111. That was not a joke.
We may be buying the world's best 20th century military when the battlefront is election security.
I had full access. I could have changed any vote.
is called a kill chain. Weaponization, paralyzation, when the governments cannot take action, that's when you finish the target.
Okay, this documentary explains how fragile our system really is, and it warns that we could lose it all if we don't protect the integrity of elections. It's very prophetic. It's also foreboding. So in our economic battle plan for this episode, we're going to show you how to watch the Kill Chain documentary and mark the most important and significant clips so that you can catch all the critical points. Their documentary proves that the machines that we used in the 2020 election are vulnerable, and they demonstrate that the very strange things that we saw happening are truly evidence of manipulation. So one of the really good scenes is a scene with Jake Stauffer. He's a cyber analyst from the Air Force, and he clearly not only found how vulnerable the systems are, despite all the assurances from the companies, he demonstrated that Dominion and ES&S are completely at risk. So to watch that clip, you'll start at the 34:35 mark and run to about 37:52. Don't forget, Jake Stauffer is a cyber analyst from the Air Force. Now, the documentary Kill Chain also exposes the myth that voting machines do not connect to the internet. You know, that's the answer that James Comey and all the officials gave. They said, well, they're secure. They don't connect to the internet. They don't connect to the internet. Testimony after testimony after testimony saying the same thing. The documentary proves that is completely false. To see that the machines are all connected, you'll want to start at the 41:18 mark and watch till about 44:15. You'll see their lies and then you'll see the truth. Kill Chain also breaks open a common voting machine. You know, the kind that you and I use when we go and vote with the touch screen? They just take a screwdriver, open it up, and show exactly how easy it is to hack. You can watch them doing it. It starts at 45:34 and runs to 49:05. It's also important to note that any decent hacker knows exactly how to compromise voting machines. Now, we heard this from Jekyll when he was in the war room, but in Kill Chain, they actually take you to the hacker conference and they show it to you real time. It starts about 52:50 and runs to 56:50. So it's 4 minutes of watching hackers laugh at how vulnerable these machines are. Bottom line, Kill Chain and Harry Hursty nailed it, and not just by a little bit. They also knew to focus on Georgia, where both the count and the recount are incredibly suspect. We were warned about Georgia in advance, and we saw exactly what they predicted would happen play out just as they told us it would. So let's take a look.
Georgia is buying new election machines for the whole state to replace the AccuVote voting machines that we know are insecure. And they are replacing them with another set of machines that are also insecure because they use barcodes, and barcodes can be hacked.
The model that is their favorite choice right now is the Dominion ImageCast.
The ImageCast X will not permit the voter to overvote a contest, to change
What
or
this does is it's a touchscreen machine. The voter enters their vote, and what is spit out is a paper ballot, and their votes are encoded as barcodes. The vote itself is in that barcode. No humans I know can read barcode very well. And it's that vote that is then put into a scanner and counted. It is, again, putting a computer between the voter and his ballot. Putting a computer between a voter and his ballot is going to make sure that you don't have an auditable, reliable election.
So even though the election officials in Georgia are paying lip service to the fact they now have a paper trail, they are creating a paper trail that in fact can't actually be audited.
You cannot say that Georgia wasn't warned. The bottom line is that all of this is very credible. It's bipartisan. And denying that election fraud happened, as the media and the Biden camp are trying to do, is ridiculous. Keep all of this in mind. The next time you hear that there is no evidence of fraud or that the 2020 election was the most secure in history, these are outright lies. Now, you heard it from us in the Economic War Room before it even happened. And you can see those episodes. Just to make it easy, we've created a page at economicwarroom.com/myvote. And you can go back and watch what we told you could happen, and now you know it has happened. And don't forget, we're also leading a coalition and built a website that can keep you updated on election fraud, give you new information, show you how the election is being impacted, and most importantly, show you how you can take action to stop this now. Let's listen to our friend David Harris Jr. urge you to visit everylegalvote.com.
I believe in freedom and I believe in America. But for freedom to survive in America, we have to have free and fair elections. Everylegalvote.com is an online citizens initiative that's collecting evidence of election fraud, misconduct, and errors, and bringing that evidence to the right authorities' attention. It also helps you do something to get corrective action taken. Join us at everylegalvote.com.
What we're seeing play out is perhaps the most intense economic warfare you will ever see. That's because the battle for control of America is largely about money. If we lose the integrity in our elections now, we will lose America. We have to take a stand now, or we'll never, ever again have a free and fair election. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. You can get your free economic battle plan for this special report, which will walk you through it and show you how to watch the Kill Chain documentary and find all the evidence for yourself at economicwarroom.com. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.